Back here with Brian Westbrook, and we are going viral. Odell Beckham is poised to have a breakout season for his new Browns squad this season, but football doesn't work out. OBJ showcased another career option at Cleveland's preseason game Saturday. Take a listen.
It's actually pretty good.
That was pretty good.
He was on that snare drum doing his thing right there. I mean, Odell Beckham, man. OBJ is just otherworldly talent, man. I mean, he was taking batting practice with the Tampa Bay Rays last year and hit a home run. I mean, the guy can kick field goals and extra points before the games when he's warming up. Like, it's just, he does everything well.
He's a great athlete. He can, just right. He can do everything. But anything involving the hands, the drums, to me, that's easy for him. That's what he does. That's his talent.
Can he sing?
Absolutely.
Huh?
Can he sing?
I bet he can sing.
Does he sing?
I don't know if he can rap, but I bet he can sing.
There might be something with the light-skinned brother. He got that light skin. He might hold a note. Yeah, just hold a note a little bit.
We'll let you stay to that. All right, Brian. Transitioning from one so-called diva receiver to the next, we're talking the latest chapter and then Antonio Brown saga. Yesterday, Brown was not at Raiders training camp because he is reportedly still unhappy after the NFL rejected his preferred helmet for clearance in games, and it seems as though General Manager Mike Mayock has had enough.
Here's the bottom line. He's upset about the helmet issue. We have supported that. We appreciate that. Okay, but at this point, we've pretty much exhausted all avenues of relief. So from our perspective, it's time for him to be all in or all out. Okay, so we're hoping he's back soon. We got 89 guys busting their tails. We are really excited about where this franchise is going. And we hope AB is going to be a big part of it starting week 1 against Denver.
All right, Brian, do you believe that the Raiders regret dealing for AB?
You know, I don't think they regret it quite yet. I think they're still disappointed at this point. I think you bring a talent in like Antonio Brown to get you 1,200 to 1,500 yards per season, to get you 10+ touchdowns. I also think you bring him in to show practice habits. We saw with T.O., he brought your practice level from here, from a championship level, to being the champion. Antonio Brown has that ability. I think Mike Mayock is absolutely right, and he has a GM talk down to a science. You want to make sure that all the guys, 89 guys that they have in camp, are on the same page. And right now, Antonio Brown has put them in a space that they can't be on the same page. He wants to help the team. They're trying to build a team with character and culture. Right now, they can't do that because of what Antonio Brown is doing. They can't build a team around that. And it's hard because the other part to that is when T.O. was out with all the situations with Andy Reid, the guys that were in the locker room, we had to answer the questions. So every day, we were exhausted by saying, what happens next with T.O., what's going on? We don't know anything. And the same thing with these guys. They're saying, listen, we don't know anything. We're here practicing. The hard part, I think, for this team is that the NFL made a decision. You're not going to be allowed to use a helmet. Why are you holding out and not coming to camp? That's the big question. Why aren't you here? Why aren't you helping the team get better? Why aren't you, whenever you get healthy enough and ready, or the helmet, why aren't you going to be up to date with the quarterback? Why aren't you sitting in meetings? These are the small things that I think the veteran leader of Antonio Brown can provide to this football team, even if he's not practicing with the feet or the helmet.
Yeah, B-Dub, that's the part of it that I can't wrap my mind around. Why is he not there with his teammates? I mean, you're talking about them breaking training camp today and going and getting ready for a preseason game, which is the dress rehearsal, the third preseason game against the Green Bay Packers up in Canada. Like, this is one of those situations where you want to be around your teammates. Even if you can't practice, you should be around there. You should be providing leadership, maybe some insight to some of the younger players that are still trying to learn, because it's a relatively young team with the Oakland Raiders. They got a lot of guys that haven't been in the NFL for a long period of time. They're still trying to understand what it takes to be successful in this league. And so I think a player like Antonio Brown can provide some insights to those guys, understanding what the formula for success is and try to replicate that week in and week out. That's the value in addition to the production that AB brings on the field. But the team can't realize any of that value because he's not there. So that's why I have to disagree with what Drew Rosenhaus says and not making a big deal about him not being there. You can't afford to throw a temper tantrum right now. This team gave you the financial commitment that you were looking for from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And guess what? You ain't catching no touchdown passes for them. So I don't understand why he's not available for Mike Mayock and John Gruden. people in that locker room are going to be looking at him in a leadership position based on what he's getting paid and what he's accomplished in this league. It's just unfortunate what he's doing with that platform with all of those guys in that locker room.
Look, he's killing their chances to build a winning culture.
Yeah.
Period. And you got a lot of young players on the offensive end, especially, who might be looking to him as an example. They've seen him. They know how great he is. They know his accolades. And they're seeing you behave like this. The Raiders have to handle this the right way. Because if they don't, then I think this could trickle down to some of the other players, and it could ruin your culture there. I agree with what Peter King wrote. I think it's time to send him the 5-day letter. And you have to be here in 5 days, ready to play. If you're not, we can put you on the reserve, left the squad list, and you can't play for anybody. New England can't pick you up, and salvage you. You can't play for anybody and in 2019. I think that'll get AB's attention, and he'll be there ready to play. Because I get that could upset him, that could offend him, and now you got a disgruntled player in your locker room. But he's brought this all on himself.
The whole locker room is disgruntled right now.
Right, and we've seen quotes, too, from, anonymously, but that players think this is insane, and they're wondering what in the world is going on. Why is he making such a big deal out of the helmet issue? So I think it's gotten to that point. And here's the other thing. If the Raiders do send that letter and put him on that list, he loses out on $29 million of his $30 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Chris. He's not crazy. I think that gets him in the building, and hopefully he just, mans up and plays if they do that.
We always hear, though, about his work ethic and how it is that he prepares himself to play. And, of course, we know the numbers and in the career he's had to this point in performing on the field. But is it foolish to expect him to be a leader? I mean, I know the Raiders are trying to build a foundation and build a culture, but given just all the things that he had done in Pittsburgh, is it silly to think that he would come in and be one of those players who is a leader for this group?
You kind of think, if you're the Raiders and you're John Gruden, that you pay him the money, he's going to do the right thing. You kind of believe that he's older now, he's matured now. You get him out of a situation that he felt was bad for him in Pittsburgh, and he'll figure out a way and do the right thing and lead these guys. Unfortunately, I think that was foolish, because right now what you're seeing is a guy that's not about the team. And for teams to win, and we saw it a lot of times in my career, for teams to win, you can't have the bickering inside the locker room. You can't have the locker room divided. And in this case, I don't think the locker room was totally divided, because they understand and they recognize his talent. They also recognize that they would have no chance of winning without him. The hard part for them, the locker room, is that we need your talent. We want you here. We want to help you, help us make us better. But they can't, because he's not there. And I think Antonio Brown has to sit down with himself and say, listen, how do I want the rest of my career to go? I'm Hall of Fame. I'm going to be a Hall of Fame type of guy, but I don't want to be a guy that's going to be sticking out like a sore thumb. I want to be a guy that helps us win, not a reason or a distraction for this football team.
They thought, to your point, because there was talk about in Pittsburgh, it was about the money, right? Yeah. That's why he was disgruntled, upset, and all that. So they did think, and I agree, his track record showed he was more about himself than the team.
Sure.
But you did think, okay, we give him the money. It's $30 million guaranteed. Now you'll be happy. You got a quarterback that's pretty good. He's not Ben Roethlisberger, but he's pretty good. You can come here and be the leader of this team, or one of them, and he's just blown it all.
Yeah, but that's misguided for Mayock and John Gruden to think that the immaturity issues are past AB. We just saw what happened in 2018 in Week 17, where he no-showed, no-called. Like, you can't anticipate 4 months later that the guy's all of a sudden going to be more mature just because you trade for him and you give him the contract extension. The money is only going to empower the player. That's only going to embolden him to continue those antics. So I don't necessarily believe that they thought he was going to mature, but I think that the value, the benefit of bringing him in outweighed the risk. And the benefit of that being, we get to find out whether or not we got a quarterback. Because, CB, you talked about building a winning culture. Let me tell you what works against that. More so than having somebody as disruptive as may be, when you have double-digit loss seasons and you continue to do that year in, year out, that keeps you from being able to build the kind of culture that John Gruden and Mike Mayock are hoping to accomplish with the Raiders. So I think that they bought in Antonio Brown because he does bring a little bit of cachet. It is some star power. They're getting ready to transition to Las Vegas. So having somebody that can be the face of the organization after you traded Khalil Mack, after you traded Amari Cooper, it makes some sense I just don't think that they realized this was going to be a problem this early on in his tenure as a Raider. He hadn't even played a game for him yet, and we're talking about A. Bree for the first few weeks of training camp.
Do you think they knew once he came in on the hot air balloon?
Yeah.
Honestly,
they knew they had some
that's
issues.
when it was like, okay,
it's a show. The hard part, I think, for what you're saying is that they're trying to figure out if they have a quarterback or not, is that you know what he's going to do in the field. But you can figure out if you have a quarterback without bringing in someone that's going to tear your complete team down and destroy it before it really gets started.
No, B-Dub, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. Look at what Antonio Brown has done the last 6 years. Over 100 catches and 1,200 yards. You can book it. You know that's a constant. So if Antonio Brown doesn't live up to those numbers, you know exactly why he's not. It's because of the quarterback. It ain't because of AB.
Well, with those numbers, Pittsburgh still wasn't able to win the title.
It ain't about winning for them right now. It's not about winning for them right now. If it was about winning, you don't trade Khalil Mack, you don't trade Amari Cooper. It's not about winning right now.
So it's about building right now. And you can't build with the guy that is willing to tear it down at the same time.
Yeah, but I can't build with a guy that I don't believe is my franchise quarterback. That's the most important position. If I ain't figured out whether or not Derek Carr is my guy before I move to Vegas, I got a real problem.
I think in this league, if you're a team and you practice with a guy for years, couple years for John Gruden with Derek Carr, and whether you have a receiving core or not, and you can't tell that this is a quarterback of the future for your organization, you got to pay a guy $30 million that's going to be a distraction, that's going to tear down your team, then you have a problem with evaluating talent. You have a problem with seeing what you see on the field. If you can't understand what Derek Carr is a man for you or not, then you have to bring in someone that is going to destroy it for you, then that's a problem with coaching and talent evaluation. That's a bigger problem than just Antonio Brown.
All right, Brian, we're going to give you a little break and see you later in the show. Coming up are the Lakers in desperation mode. That's next on First Things First.